from Los Angeles, this is the Echelon Radio Network.
Hi, and welcome back to another edition of the Echelon Radio Podcast. I'm Brian Hemsworth, and today I have in our studio attorney extraordinaire, Adam Grant. Adam, thanks for coming in today. Appreciate it.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you.
So, Adam, I wanted to start. A lot of us in the business community, we know you. We've been aware of your work. We know you from networking, and we know about some of your other activities outside of the legal world. But what I haven't necessarily heard, and I thought a great place for us to start, is the beginning. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
So I was born in Phoenix, Arizona in March of 1964. Grew up there and went to elementary school, middle school, beginning of high school, and then moved to San Diego and then up to LA. But Phoenix, Arizona, that's my roots.
Phoenix. So when you went to San Diego, about when was that?
That would be in June 1980.
So 80, you would have been high school?
Yeah, I was 16 at the time.
And whereabouts in San Diego?
It was really difficult. My parents decided that La Jolla needs to be the place to move to. So, yeah, it was extremely rough moving. We lived on top of Mount Soledad in La Jolla and about 3 miles from the beach. So I spent as much time as possible when I wasn't in school riding my bike down the mountain and going to either Pacific Beach or all the way into La Jolla and then riding back up.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you were actually doing a lot of that activity early on in your life?
Yeah, very, very early on. So, and when I first started to do that, moving to San Diego, it was on a beach cruiser. So no gears.
No gears and a heavy bike.
And going uphill for miles. So it was a lot of fun.
And so it was a training bike.
Yes, exactly.
And you said 1980?
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah.
So ironically, we were in San Diego at the same time. I was at San Diego State.
Go Aztecs.
In the 80s, yeah. But everybody says, oh, was that the one that's, out by La Jolla? And I go, no, that's the other one. If San Diego State was out in La Jolla, we would have never graduated, never gotten anything done. It's the smart ones that go to the one in La Jolla on that. So then when you came up to LA approximately, when was that?
Well, I graduated from that school in La Jolla, UC San Diego. I was a Triton.
See, he's one of the smart guys.
So I graduated from UC San Diego in 1986 and then moved up to North Hollywood, actually. And as I'm fond of saying, moved in with my then girlfriend, now wife.
Very good.
Yeah.
And was that for law school that you came up?
Yeah, it was. Well, no. If truth be told, it was for Joyce.
Oh.
So, but yes, I was going to go
for a more important reason.
Way more important. So we were definitely going to be moving in together because we had been dating since I was 17.
Wow.
And I got a job actually, because we were moving up, I was moving up there. I got a job in Los Angeles working at a law firm just really as a file clerk. Mm-hmm. But it was a family friend who connected me, and the idea was I actually took a year off between graduating from UC San Diego and starting at Southwestern University Law School. But it freaked my dad out, thinking, Adam's never going to go back to school.
Lost year.
Yeah, of course, that was not the case. It was more, okay, now I'm going to be in a law firm, really seeing what's going on, and at the same time studying for the LSATs, and then getting ready and dealing with law school.
I actually think, from now having had friends and foreign exchange students from Europe coming and living here, and it's very common for them. It's not as common for us. And I think it's one of the smartest things that you can do somewhere along that way. Take a little bit of that gap year, spend a little bit of time figuring out, or even just stepping away from school for a little bit. I think it makes that postgraduate experience a little bit better.
It was really... In hindsight, of course, I agree with that entirely. It was a really good mental and emotional break. Even more so, I reflect on it, and I thought, wow, good idea, Adam, because moving up to LA, so completely relocating, moving in with a girlfriend of 4 years and kind of getting adjusted to, well, we've been dating long distance for 4 years. you're living with somebody. That's a whole nother ball of wax. It actually became very easy, which was part of the reason why we ended up getting married. It was just quite natural. So it was a good time. She was going through her student teaching, and then we were, I started law school.
So let's talk a little bit about that legal journey.
Sure.
Did you have a particular area? Did law run in the family at all? Did you have experience with that when you started, or was it all new?
It was not all new. My father was an attorney. He started practicing, was your quintessential Philadelphia lawyer, moved out to Phoenix in the 50s, and was a solo practitioner. He literally, as they say, pretty much did anything that came in the door as far as work, civil litigation, DUIs, light criminal defense, and family law issues. However, he truly did almost everything to try and dissuade me.
Oh, really?
Oh, my gosh. He would say frequently, you never want to get into law. His phrase, and I affectionately say they're Jimmyisms, because my dad's name was James. So one of his Jimmyisms was, the practice of law is essentially hawking little old ladies over the head for money. I'm thinking, really, Dad? Now, in hindsight, with my own firm, while he didn't actually mean that, what he didn't like was the business of law. Okay, where it's not just only law firms, but any business when you have receivables, it is what it is.
I was going to say collections are just not fun no matter what.
No matter what. Yeah. But of course, despite him trying to dissuade me, I went on, and he was incredibly proud of me. I will say, though, from very early on, it was pretty destined for me. I was the only person in my third grade who came and actually presented current events through the Wall Street Journal. Mrs. Brooks, to this day, and a number of years ago when I met her up, she reminded me of that. She's like, I never had in all my teaching career a third grader present current events through the Wall Street Journal. But it was natural for me because my father literally read Wall Street Journal, LA Times, and the Arizona Republic every Sunday. That's what I had at the Sunday, breakfast right there. Now, interestingly enough, at least at that point, Wall Street Journal actually had little snippets of news articles right in the beginning. You had the deep ones that were on the far right that went in multiple pages.
Yeah.
But they also had kind of, then sound bites. And for me, it became great. They're a couple of paragraphs long. It gives me a little taste of what's going on in something or other, and I found it really intriguing. That's what I use for current events.
I have a little secret when we help clients with, for example, writing blog posts. One of the things that you can do is you can say, here's an interesting piece from the Wall Street Journal, and everybody thinks you're the most well-read person, and you don't have to do anything other than say, here's a great article, and then link to it, and it makes you sound like you're really smart. Even if you haven't spent a whole lot of time with the Wall Street Journal. I haven't subscribed for a while, but I still link to them through the website.
Yeah. I learned that in third grade.
So when you got into law school, and you've got some law that runs in the family, a little bit of law floating through the veins. But did you know what you wanted to do? Did you have an idea of what practice area, or did you just kind of soak it all in?
I had an inkling that my DNA really pointed me towards litigating. I can tell you that from quick reading, quick digesting, the gift of gab came relatively young. I spent summers, one particular summer, working on the Hill in Washington, D.C. I remember coming back as a teenager, and one of my uncles literally watched me, as he said, work the room like a seasoned politician at the ripe young age of 18 years old. And he marveled afterwards and said, don't think I've seen an 18-year-old do that. I really enjoy public speaking. I really enjoy the challenge of having to think quickly on my feet. And very early on, that just kind of instilled litigation. And then when I got into law school, I was a moot court finalist, best brief nominee. It seemed to be pretty destined. As I knew it was pretty much where I was going to end up when competing in moot court in the first, which is fake oral advocacy in front of a court of appeals, which are professors, sometimes judges, sometimes attorneys. The first round, and it's just by lottery, I end up having to go up against the head of, the number one person in our school as far as grades goes. So it's like, okay, great. Well, he did really well as far as exams, and he lost.
Oh my.
So the editor of Law Review was my opponent first up, and he didn't win. So from that, I said, okay, clearly there must be something here. I've managed. I may not have the grades he does, but I can argue circles around him.
Yeah, I was going to say, at a certain point when you go to court, they're not going to look at your grades.
Right.
They're going to want to experience what you can do in court. So it sounds to me like some of that early upbringing and some of your that gift of gab that you mentioned and your ability to process that information long before law school, that really paid dividends. And if we now jump out of law school and look at you today, are you still able to apply all of that you learned before law school, all of that ability to talk people and convince people of things?
I will say that I have certainly gained the reputation of being a trial attorney, and it's a whole different breed. Many times, if you're not an attorney, you don't understand the distinction. There are attorneys who literally don't even file, they are litigators, but they don't even file complaints. They just try and settle. There are those who then will actually start litigating, and those, they will just try and settle quickly, or they just won't get into the thick of it. And then if they get anywhere close to trial, they're giving it to somebody else. And then there's our attorneys who essentially, I would live in the courtroom. I would absolutely love to just do back-to-back trials.
Wow.
And that's, my firm knows that, my partners know that. Any chance I get, regardless of the stakes, put me in trial.
So if you were to just estimate right now, when we, those who aren't in the legal profession, most of us assume all attorneys spend time in court. And then over time, we learn that many, many, many don't. What percentage would you say are like you that sort of get bitten by the litigation bug and then really enjoy that?
Really enjoy being in trial?
Yeah.
5%.
5%.
It's stressful.
Yeah.
It's, you've got your client right there. You have the judge, you have all, the jurors, everybody's looking at you when you're doing things. You are absolutely performing, and you're doing it with some pretty high stakes. And you're doing it day after day after day. The longest jury trial I've had is 3.5 months.
Wow.
Monday through Friday, 8:30 till 4:30, several hundred exhibits, and I think we ended up with about 30 witnesses.
Wow.
And it was an absolute charge. Now, I slept for a few days after we took the verdict, but
I bet.
it was pretty incredible.
So let's go forward now. I know you've gone through some changes, and sometime, I can't even remember exactly when, you can guide me in on this. It was maybe just before COVID or during COVID. You had a firm change. Can you tell us about the firm and what's going on at the firm right now, and what are you doing at the firm?
So, right, I started with Albert Barr and Grant when 2007. Literally, after Lee Alpert had retired and Gary Barr was in the process of, we knew that a merger was likely so that we can continue on with the transactional practice. And it was in 2021, still pretty much in the thick of the pandemic, when we merged and Shenon Law came into our practice. And then most recently, of course, with Gary retiring, Nutella and I changed the firm, so it's now Grant Shenon. And it's been an incredible ride so far. The firm has grown. We just hired another transactional attorney. We're looking at hiring a 17th attorney. An offer is out. We're hoping probably by the beginning of this year to nail that down. And it's expanded into areas as far as how we market ourselves. We had never done before. And right now, for me, I head up the litigation practice. and complex business litigation, a lot of real estate and construction matters.
So you there was a physical move,
Right.
but it wasn't really that far. It was kind of
Right. We moved from an office that the firm had been at since the early 80s in Encino, and we moved to Sherman Oaks on Ventura Boulevard.
gotcha. So not really too far.
No.
What about the firm itself, the culture of the firm, practice areas? Did that change much?
There was some reduction in practice areas because Gary had certain specialties with mobile home law and certain transactional areas that he has done. Nutella brings a wealth of transactional experience to the firm. She has some Reg D offering private placement memorandum type experience. She worked at a company beforehand where she pretty much took it public. Mm-hmm. So her depth of transactional experience around those types of mergers and acquisitions and public offerings is pretty significant. The firm also, under my supervision, does data privacy as well.
And I assume that is probably still a pretty high growth area for the firm?
It's an incredible area of growth, primarily because the law is simply not anywhere near where their technology is. So what happens is technology changes on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. The law lags behind, which means there's all kinds of updates. There's all kinds of bills pending. Since we're in California, and we are really the state that leads the legal landscape as far as data privacy in the United States, it's cutting edge. So it's forever updating my clients. It's forever updating agreements that relate to data privacy. And, of course, if there's a data breach, making sure that the most up-to-date laws are used in responding to it.
So for I don't know, maybe the past 5 to 10 years, we've heard that Europe is really ahead of the U.S. in terms of data privacy and the laws that they have. Is that still the case, or has the U.S. kind of caught up? I do know that people now do refer to California as kind of leading that charge in the U.S.
So that's a matter of perspective.
Okay.
Okay. Europe passed the General Data Privacy Protection Act, and one would say that is actually not advanced, but more draconian. And the way data privacy is essentially handled in the United States is very different than it's handled in Europe, because in Europe, it's basically the EU putting out, for the most part, it's the EU putting out this law. It's more done on a countrywide basis, even within. So whether it's Germany or what have you, by country. The United States doesn't do it really by country. Only there's some federal laws, of course, that apply to it. But unlike Europe, each individual state then has their own set of privacy laws. So if you're in Europe and you're in Poland or Germany or what have you, you comply with one set of laws.
So you've got an EU blanket,
right?
Whereas we have a little bit of layers of a federal layer and then state layers, and probably more in the way of state.
Yes, more in the way of state.
Gotcha.
Now, because a lot of clients come to me and say, well, I'm actually selling product, or I have clients all over the country. How can I possibly comply with all the various little idiosyncrasies of each individual states? And that's a valid, you're not a huge Fortune 500 company that can really drill down on all of those and make sure it works. And most businesses are not that. So the best advice I give clients is comply with California.
Okay. That's a great starting point.
Yeah, because while there may be, various nuances in different states, they all frequently will take off of California. So if you're complying with California, you have at least substantially complied with virtually everything else.
Gotcha. So just staying on the firm now for another moment, I want to toss you a very soft pitch, and that is, we call you when? What are the things that should trigger us to think about coming to you with legal issues?
You need to call me well in advance of any type of dispute. Anything. If you are doing anything with your business, if you're acquiring a piece of property, if you are, even if you're an individual and you want somebody to review over an insurance policy, literally the first person you need to call is your attorney. The reason being is if you wait until there's problems, then you've probably created a bigger problem than you really need.
So if we are doing some kind of transactional work and we specifically hear or think of dispute, that's a trigger. But even before that, if we're looking at things that could possibly, that's a trigger for us to call early.
Call early. And while I primarily do litigation, of course, the firm does the transactional work. And when you have a firm that can approach a client in a holistic manner in such that it's not just litigation and what variation on the theme there can be depending upon the topic, but can also address their transactional needs, you're able to mesh those minds together and be able to really anticipate problems because within the deal documents, they come to me and I know, okay, that indemnity agreement isn't going to work in this. This particular venue clause is not really working. This arbitration clause is outdated and actually has these problems because of this particular case. And statutes have just recently been changed on this particular phrase in this choice of law provision, so you need to update it. Those are the types of things, if you have a firm such as ours, we can identify those things and with the depth of experience, identify them quickly, efficiently, and cost-effectively.
So you're really bringing in expertise on that transactional side, and also you've got a lot of experience on the litigation side. So that's the blend that's really protecting your clients or hopefully keeping them away from a lot of the problems that might otherwise flare up.
Right. The ability to be a hybrid is really critical.
Gotcha. All right. So I want to have just a little bit of fun with this as well. We've been talking some business, but you have a particular, well, you began mentioning this with San Diego. You run, you swim, you ride bikes, and you do it a lot, and you compete. Did that start with San Diego, or is that something that, once you got back or came up to LA that you really started in on that?
No, again, I tend to be pretty consistent in my life and goal-oriented. It actually started from when I was, before I was 1 year old. Yeah, take a deep breath on that statement.
I'm trying to process.
Okay,
that.
so my mom was a lifeguard.
Oh, okay.
She was a lifeguard at the local Jewish community center, and we had a pool in our backyard. So I literally learned how to swim and walk at the same time.
Oh, my goodness.
So by the time I was 13, 14, 15 months old, I was water safe and walking like crazy. By the time I was 5, I knew every stroke and was swimming competitively. I swam competitively throughout high school, and I learned really quickly, for some strange reason, I can run even as a 3rd or 4th grader faster and longer than most 8th graders could. So when I got into high school, it was 4 years of varsity track, a couple of years of wrestling, a couple of years of football. In college, it ended up being rowing crew. And then living in San Diego, I didn't own a car during college. So I ended up riding my bike, a road bike, finally. I graduated into that, from the top of Mount Soledad to UC San Diego. And then my study partners lived in Del Mar. I'd ride, down Torrey Pines, up Torrey Pines into Del Mar, and then I'd ride home. And so that ended up being a solid 30 to 40 miles, sometimes 50 miles or so, every couple of days to deal with. And after law school, kept running, and then finally putting it all together, a friend of mine said, you swim like a damn fish. I've seen you run and drop, really do well in marathons. Can you bike? I said, of course I can. That's all she wrote. It's been about 35 years I've been doing triathlons.
Wow. So I've spent a little time in San Diego myself. A lot of people think of San Diego as being, by the beach, and they don't realize what kind of hills we do have there. and it actually is great for training. I did an interview with Pete Pensiers, if you remember him, Race Across America winner.
Yeah, Ram.
And he basically trained most of the year just in San Diego proper. He worked at San Onofre. I always thought he had a little bit of nuclear help there, but he would get special permission to ride through Pendleton so he could ride into San Diego, back to San Diego. And he'd do that at lunch.
Right.
And then when it was getting close, the 2 months before the RAM event, he would start in San Diego, and Friday night after work, he would ride to Arizona and back. And that was his training, right? And he'd get back sometime on Sunday. And that literally, and he would just go. He'd go with, money and a credit card in a pocket, and he'd stop somewhere and he'd sleep for a few hours, and he'd stop at a 7-Eleven or grab something along the way. With those events, the triathlons, give me one or two of the most memorable. What have been your favorites that you've done? Because I know you've done a lot.
Hands down. So it actually was an Ultraman. So most people are familiar with the term Ironman. Most people know, in Hawaii there's an Ironman. Well, Ironman's actually a distance, 2.5 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a marathon, 26.2 miles. So after I had done a number of those, I stepped up to doing Ultraman, which is actually a 3-day event. First day is a 6.2 mile swim, and then a 90 mile bike. The second day is 171 miles of cycling, and then the third day is a double marathon, 52.4 miles.
Oh, my goodness.
So after doing 12 Ironmans, I then stepped up to do an Ultraman in Florida in 2017, and I then decided I wanted to go. That qualified me to apply to the Ultraman World Championships in Kona, Hawaii. So I was accepted, and in 2018 I raced. In 2018, this was in November, during that year is when the Big Island of Hawaii actually had quite a lot of volcanic activity. The southern portion of the island got significantly covered with lava, and a portion of the race therefore could not happen in the southern portion. So we had to go up and over the middle part.
Oh,
so what is normally 171 miles of cycling with about 8,000 feet of climbing turned into 171 miles of cycling and almost 15,000 feet of climbing. So the most memorable part, precursor, was that second day. It was a tough swim the first day, and coming into the second day, I was like, okay, hope my legs are here. And I managed to get to the top of the volcano, and then I almost passed out. I couldn't clip in. I had to have somebody push my feet in to clip in, but I managed to get to the top. I realized at that point that it was not safe for me to descend the 20 some odd miles with crosswinds of 40 miles an hour, and I had to pull the plug. So I did not finish that day. I was crying. I was trying to emotionally kind of grapple with this, and yet I came through, and this next day I still ran the double marathon.
Oh, wow.
And then the next year I went and I finished the entire thing.
Oh, my God.
In record time for me.
2019.
In 2019 was finishing, and my whole family was there. And there's a photo of me crossing the finish line in 2019 with all 3 daughters, with my wife there. And that pretty much, in my mind, was the pinnacle. I completed the Ultraman World Championships with my family right next to me.
And compared to, say, the first time you competed in an Ironman, did that still beat that experience?
Hands down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, hands down. First one was Ironman Arizona, and I finished in about 12 hours and 14 minutes with my oldest daughter crossing the finish line. That was cool. But the Ultraman World Championships, with my entire family there, that was it.
Oh, goodness. How long do you think you're going to keep doing this?
Funny you should ask. So I have nowhere near retiring, but I can tell you what I'm going to do when I retire. Okay? 1, I'm going back to school. And 2, my wife and I are going to travel, and there's Ironmans all over the world. So I can go and do an Ironman, ship my bike back, and we could travel. So as far as I'm concerned, last time I heard, the oldest person who finished an Ironman was, I think it was 84, 85. I'm good.
Wow. What are you going to go back to school for?
Not math and not science. Okay. When I was in school, I loved learning. I loved learning, reading. I love history. I love politics. I was a poli-sci major and a double minor with U.S. history and political philosophy. So anything humanities, any social sciences. I mean, sociology was something I took, I really enjoyed. Greek mythology, I really, really enjoyed. You know, anything to keep my mind active. But I love learning.
I do a fair amount of teaching, and a psychologist friend that I know, had asked me why, and I said, well, I just enjoy it. I enjoy being in the classroom. And he informed me that a lot of people that teach because we like learning. That we've actually subconsciously, we just gravitate to those surroundings. And I now, after about 17, 18 years of mostly being an adjunct, have learned that, oh my gosh, it's so true. It keeps you on your game.
Yeah.
And now with the internet, you have students that are fact-checking you in real time in the classroom, which 17 years ago they weren't. Yeah. I could get away with, lecturing on, just the on whatever was coming up in my mind. And now I've got to be on my game. Yeah. And I know it sounds really corny, but I learn an awful lot from those students. Everything that I've learned in terms of social media content marketing has really come from my students, and I love that ability to just keep learning. And I think it's a little bit easier for us now. I think we live in a world where we're allowed to keep learning, and it almost feels like a generation ago you kind of stopped and then you moved into a different thing. And lifelong learning is much more of a thing right now. So for you, it'll be lifelong learning, lifelong running, lifelong riding, and lifelong swimming. I'm going to circle back to just one because I got to ask. I'm a biker. You mentioned that first road bike. Do you remember what that road bike was?
Yes, it was a Fuji. It was bronze in color, and I had toe cages and probably Shimano 105s on it, and the shifters was on the stem, on the down tube.
Yeah, mine was Shimano 600, so one step before that. Yeah. It was a Bianchi. And believe it or not, I still have that bike in my garage. It's got a lot of rust on it, and I haven't ridden it in 20 years, but I still have that among others. Well, listen, Adam, I really appreciate your coming in. Thanks for sharing some of your background and what's going on with the firm and some of these fun experiences. We just barely scratched the surface, so at some point later on, I'd love to have you come back in and maybe help educate us so we can keep learning a little bit about not only some of the stuff you're doing outside. I want to hear about the adventures and the competitions you do and the learning, but also you're able to bring us a lot of very important stuff about law. So thank you very much. Appreciate your coming in for that.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Presented by Echelon Business Development. More than just networking. Way more.